So Kim Fields left, I think it was 5.9 that she left. So she was there for a majority of season 5. But
Absolutely.
talk a little bit about her leaving and what that meant.
Kim/Regine's departure was very different from having to say farewell to my brother TC in the role of Kyle, because her character got her happy ending. So even though it was accelerated, because we hoped that we were going to be around for 6, 7, 8 seasons, and here we were, season 5, and a shortened one at that. We wanted to bring her storyline to its planned ending, so that felt very different. Everybody got what they wanted, and that was, I think, a good thing. She was no longer living single, so her departure completely made sense, and it was a quality creative choice.
So did you know going into the finale that it would be the series finale?
Yes and no. Yes and no. Now you're asking me a question.
Meaning?
We were hoping, against hope, that we would get a call extending that final season by some number of episodes. We actually did a little joke about it, which exists somewhere, but it did not air. Where after Khadijah leaves and closes the door, there's a call on the answer machine. It's the president of the network. That was just for us.
Oh, that's
It was
great.
just for us. We were hoping against hope because we also weren't ready to say goodbye to our family. We'd created such a beautiful thing there for everyone, top to bottom, every member of the crew. Just a wonderful experience. And people reach out to me all the time from that show. Like, they haven't had it as good since, and I think, fortunately, I kind of have, but it's hard. It's hard to kind of compare your first to any subsequent experience because it'll always be your first. It'll be like your first love. Yeah. There's always something special there that other relationships don't have. That doesn't mean that they're not also extraordinary and wonderful, but it was a really, really good thing that I cherish. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about crafting and then shooting the finale, because we did see quite a few happy endings there.
Yes. Well, I liked. I co-wrote that episode with my co-showrunning partners, Pond and Fuller, Bill and Jim, and we just had a lot of fun. Hoping against hope that it wouldn't be the last episode, but pretty sure that it would. We just wanted to make sure that we, tied up all the loose ends. And I was a fan of what I used to call the bittersweet stank ending. Like, I didn't really like things that were neat and super sweet. But I did feel like that was the proper way to say farewell to this beautiful show, this beautiful cast of characters, this talented group of actors, to give everybody something that just felt satisfying, and also to bring back TC in the role of Kyle and to have it paid off in such a wonderful way with, Max discovering that her baby that she was artificially inseminated with was actually Kyle's child. Was so fun for the audience, super fun for me, because as the wife of Kyle Bowser, I was carrying his first child at the time. So it was just really easy. It was just really easy and fun. And again, just felt so right, and it was personal. It was emotional. And there's some moments that people on social media have pointed out, some whispers that people had behind the scenes that we didn't notice when we put the cut together. So there's some surprises. There's some Easter eggs in there. Go back and watch.
Oh.
There's some moments there that were not planned, and so I think everyone felt pretty satisfied by the finale. The only thing unsatisfying about it was that it was the finale.
Yeah.
But we did 118 episodes, and that's like 117 more than we ever knew we were going to get. We also were the beneficiaries of a 2-season pickup after the second season, which was really lovely. It was such a vote of confidence, even though we had come up on the schedule against some juggernauts on other networks. But we did our thing. And the show was #1 in Black and Latino households for its entire run, which is also why we didn't understand how we didn't make the schedule for season 5. It was just kind of these arbitrary creative decisions get made, in the executive ranks, and you just are kind of
Why do you think they didn't have a season 6?
subject to it. Yeah, but I'm glad we got to wrap it up properly, because Different World didn't get a proper finale, half and half. We had a series cliffhanger. And I've seen other shows, that not necessarily given a great send-off. So at least we did get that satisfaction. And the show had earned it. It had more than earned it. It helped build a network.
Yeah.
It helped build a network.
It's streaming now on Hulu and I think maybe Max as well. Are you hearing that it's having a second life? Are there people discovering it for the first time now?
It's like a cat. It has 9 lives, this show. I mean, there's so many, quality classic shows that have no audience now, that are not, you can't find them anywhere because no one wants to watch it. No one's interested. And I have teenagers reaching out to me. They're discovering the show. People in their 20s and 30s who watched it with their parents when they were young, and it has whole new meaning, and they're doing TikToks and Instagram posts about it. It's really phenomenal. It's really phenomenal.
With Living Single, you were the first Black woman to create, run, and produce your own primetime series in the United States. What does that mean to you?
Super special place in history that I don't usually take the time to step back and savor or acknowledge. In fact, when it happened, I wasn't even aware that it hadn't been achieved before. Had I known, I probably would have backed out. Something I probably would have said, no, wait, it hasn't been done. It can't be done. Me? But it's a source of pride, for sure, to have broken a glass ceiling. What a privilege. What a privilege from someone who did not grow up with privilege, who does not embrace privilege now. But what a privilege to be that person, to have made history with a groundbreaking show. Because there wasn't a show like it before it. It is the blueprint.
What would you say is the legacy of Living Single?
There's so many layers to the legacy of Living Single. We broke ground. We crashed glass ceilings. We set a tone. We changed the game. We blazed a trail. And I think as a show, we reached back and pulled some others along with us. I think we showed that we have value. I mean, not that that was unknown, but we kind of helped to reinforce that idea and create new opportunities for the next generation of Black creatives.
You mentioned earlier there have been some discussions about a possible reboot. Where do those currently stand?
In a quiet little room, in a box. That's where those discussions are right now.
Have there been thoughts of prequel, sequel, reboot? Have they all been discussed?
All of the above.
Mm-hmm.
All of the above. And I think when the idea is right, the timing is right, the auspices are right, you'll get more Living Single in some form.
I'll take that. All right.
Yes. I mean, it was created as a love letter to my people. And I still love them. And they still love us. So we're looking for ways to give them more.
Excellent. I wanted to mention, in 1996, you co-created the series Lush Life, which was during the run of Living Single. Mm-hmm. So were you running both shows at the same time?
I was and I wasn't running both shows at the same time. I had one hand in the Living Single pot and another hand on the wheel of Lush Life. And I wish I had done that differently. I wish I'd really tried to have a firm grasp on both at the same time. I feel like that was a situation where I let my youth and lack of feeling empowered enough to push back against what the studio wanted, which was for me to focus on the new show. The new baby needed mom's full attention. And it was sad when that show got canceled unceremoniously. I mean, the whole night got canceled. So it was a great show. I loved working with my girlfriend, Karen Parsons, whom I'd known since junior high, and her good girlfriend, Lori Petty. It was super fun. It was ahead of its time, and we had a really great staff. But it was over, after 6 episodes. But like life, you take the good with the bad. I mean, I felt like I'd failed when I got the phone call that the show was canceled and the whole night was canceled. I don't know why I made it about me. Like, I failed, and I called my mom and I'm like, I failed. And 2 days later, I found out I was pregnant with my first son. So I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll be all right. Maybe there's something good here that I can, lean into, honestly. And the opportunity to go back and be at Living Single full time was one that I welcomed.
So then in 1998, you created For Your Love.
Yes. I mean, honestly, just ripping those pages out of my diary. I mean, I figured this is going to work. It's like I chronicled my life in college on A Different World. I chronicled my life as a young single person in the city on Living Single. And, I now had, evolved into this life of coupledom. A lot of our friends, were having kids and getting married, and I was, it was a very simple pitch. In fact, I think Warren Littlefield, who ran NBC, which is where the show was sold and started, claimed at some point he bought that particular pitch after a sentence. It's like 3 couples, 3 different stages of love. It's just that simple a concept. So again, just the tearing of pages from my diary and wanting to, chronicle that next chapter. And we had such a blast on that show. And of course, I was reunited with my high school girlfriend, Holly Robinson Pete. She had a deal at Warner Brothers. So that was kind of an easy decision to make. And we both were pregnant with our first set of, she was having a set of twins and I was having my singleton, Evan. But that was a really wonderful experience too. And then D.W. Moffat, who was cast as Dean, his wife was having a baby. Our director, Barnett's wife, was having a baby. So we just had all these babies on set. We had a special trailer for them. I mean, I love being able to, again, create that wonderful, welcoming family environment as part of the work environment. It was, again, just a blessing. Really terrific to be able to do that for the people you work with so that they can find that work-life balance, because that's really important.
Yeah.
We give a lot to our work, and it should give us something back, other than the art. I do believe that. Put our life's blood into it.
You mentioned the show started on NBC, but it ended on the WB.
Correct.
Can you talk a little bit about that transition?
Yes. The transition creatively wasn't a big one from NBC to the WB, but it was one of those situations where there was some politics happening between the network and the studio, and we kind of came up short because ratings-wise, we were a hit. We were actually in what they call a hammock time slot between Suddenly Susan and Mad About You, and we actually built on our lead-in. And actually, at some point, we're doing better than Mad About You. So by just the empirical data, we should have been renewed, but we were not, because there was some battles going on behind the scene having to do nothing with our show. But our show was a casualty of that.
What was your experience of working with the WB?
It was terrific. It really was. It was easy, honestly. I mean, it's kind of like, in thinking about it, I'm drawing a blank because it was there was no conflict. They just loved the show and it did well, and we got another few seasons out of it. We had a good run. We had a really good run. And people are clamoring to see that show in syndication somewhere or on streaming. And we're hoping that does happen, because people really love that show. We had so much fun on that show behind the scenes. We really did. It was really fun working and playing with my friends.
You had grown up watching Laverne and Shirley herself played Sherry's mom on the show. So what was it like to get to work with Cindy Williams?
So fun. I mean, like, she's hilarious, kind, generous. You also got to work with Tyne Daly. She played D.W. Moffat, Dean's mom. That was awesome because she is a force. She is a force. I've really been blessed to work with some amazing, iconic talent. We had Eartha Kitt on Living Single. I'll never forget it. Never forget it. Like, you just some people are just like touched by the hand of God. And if you get a chance to be in their atmosphere, just embrace it and just hold tight.
Yeah. You make me want to mention more guest stars.
Yeah.
Guest star on the TV show Living Single.
I know.
Single now. But there were a lot of musical stars on the show as
Yes,
well. Did Queen
yes.
Latifah help bring people in, or was that
We all
your
did.
influence?
Yes, Latifah definitely did. She definitely got us naughty by nature for sure. But music is a big part of my life. Not that I'm particularly musical, but I do love a spontaneous song. And that's very organic to who I am. And as you know, in the end of the pilot, the ladies sing in the bathroom because that's something that I do all the time and do it with my girlfriends. I did it with my cousins, Lisa, when she lived with me. She's an opera singer. It was also the first time that Latifah actually sang instead of rapped. Like, we had to talk her into that. In episode 6, she sang. She was a little nervous. She sang I Will Survive. But then she started this whole other career where she doesn't rap, she sings. And she has a beautiful voice. She has a beautiful voice. But it's just, again, music is such a big part of our lives. It should be part of the show. It should be part of the show. And it was an organic part of the show. One of my favorite musical moments was Grant Hill singing to Rasheen and Khadijah. So sweet. So sweet. I love a sweet love song sung by a basketball star who doesn't really have much of a voice.
Who doesn't love that?
Who doesn't love that? It's just endearing. It's
Queen
just
Latifah
endearing.
did the theme song, though, didn't she?
She did.
Yeah.
She did. We recorded that theme song in the wee hours of the morning. I'll never forget that. Because people who work in the music business like to work through the night. Yes. They do, I guess. I mean, honestly, I write a lot during the wee hours, so I kind of get it. But I'm saying the music business is known for people working in the wee hours. So, you know, the tracks were laid down, and we were waiting, and she arrived, and we laid it down, and it was done in a session. So that was fun to watch. Yeah.
So in 2002, you were the showrunner and executive producer of Half and Half, but you didn't create the show. So how did you get involved with the program?
My agent had a client who'd written the script for Half and Half, so he created the show. And UPN was looking to make a pilot from that script and with that premise, a show from that premise. But it was written with white actors in mind, and they wanted to cast it Black or with a multi-ethnic cast. And I thought it was an interesting challenge to take something that was intended for one cultural group and kind of adapt it to another. So I kind of went out of my way, even though I had kind of the ability to rewrite it as much as I wanted to. I tried this experiment of polishing it very little. It was a very good script. It was funny. And I just kind of added a little bit of layers to the characters and try to think about what their backstories might have been, because I always need some backstory. I don't know how to move forward without knowing what came before the moment that we're meeting these characters. And my noble experiment worked out. And I liked what I proved to myself, which is that we're all human, and the human experience is universal. And that, you know, obviously when you're writing something for a specific, you know, ethnic or cultural group, you want to give it that flavor. But not every moment needs to be slathered with our differences, you know, because ultimately we're writing about the human experience, the human condition. And hopefully our work is helping that condition evolve.
When you create backstory, what does that look like? Are you making giant bios for everyone?
Making giant bios for everyone, figuring out, like, where do they work and why do they work there? How did they get there? What was the history of these two half-sisters who didn't grow up together? And quite frankly, I filled in a lot of those gaps with my own history with my half-sister, Stephanie.
You posted on Instagram that you worked with your half-sister on the show. What was
Right,
that like?
right when I began working on and running Half and Half, my half-sister decided that she wanted a new life. She had lived in Philadelphia her entire life, and she wanted to move to California. So, like other people, she came and lived in my house for some period of time. Everyone had a little tour. They lived in my house for a while. And we had been kind of more recently in contact with each other, and we were kind of actively forming a relationship as adult sisters. Like, we both wanted it. It's like kind of time and distance and the lack of social media and, ease of contact didn't exist. So we really had to make an effort. Obviously, we had phones, but, it's hard to build a relationship that way. And so we had taken a trip together, and then we were like, we could do this. We could live in the same house. We could figure that out. And of course, I was married and had kids, or at least one, and then I was pregnant with another one, or had had both by then. I don't know. My timeline might be a little off, but I was married with children, and she was actually a grandmother at that point because she was a young mother, and her daughter had a child young. So she was just looking to start anew, and she came out here, and she had a thriving catering business, and she met the man who became her first and only husband, and then they decided to move back to Philadelphia, where they now have a beautiful restaurant and a family. So things turned out well for her too. But it was nice to explore that. I just remember we added the device, if you will, of some flashbacks to Mona and Dee Dee's childhood. And there's a picture of my sister Stephanie and I where we're at, it's my 3rd birthday, her 6th birthday, and we're holding cakes, and there are these bikes that have banana seats that are in the back that we both got the same bike, and mine had tassels and hers didn't. And that was such a sore spot for her for years. So I'm like, let's do that story. Let's show that flashback. So again, my diary is very, very thin. I've just exploited all of it. So I have to go live more life so I can come up with more stories to tell. It also helps to mentor other show creators so their diaries can get thin while I'm building my next chapter.
Yes, and we're going to talk about all of that. Tell us a little bit about casting the show, because you'd worked with some of the actors on some previous pilots. Is that right?
I'd worked with Essence Atkins on a pilot that I wrote with my husband Kyle called The Thing About Family, which, it's another little tough one, because that show should have been picked up to series. The Thing About Family should have been picked up to series. It was like the highest tested comedy pilot that season. People in the testing groups were comparing it to The Cosby Show. And it was about, half siblings and step siblings and the thing about family. Like, it was time, but I think too many people on the inside they only had like nuclear families and didn't quite connect with it. But usually testing wins out. In that case, it did not. And that was a pilot for NBC that didn't go forward. And it was also one of those times where when the executives call you and they're like in tears that the show didn't go because they so believed in it and they just didn't win the battle in the scheduling room. But it was really great. So I met Essence, and we cast her as the youngest sister. Danny, I believe, was her name in that pilot. I also worked with Gabrielle Union in that show. So, and those two became best friends. They've been best friends since, Essence and Gabrielle. So I was looking forward to working with Essence again.
When a show doesn't get picked up, does that become fuel for you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like they're either logs or propane. Got to keep going. Got to keep going.
Yeah.
That's my dad in me for sure. Like, yeah, you feel it, and you might feel it for a while. Like, I do still feel, a little void for that pilot and a handful of others. But I've sold a lot of shows, so, I can process it, as frustration or fuel, right? And I prefer to use it as fuel. That's the only way forward. Frustration is stagnant.
Half and Half ran on UPN. What was your experience of working with the network?
That was a really great relationship. It really was. And in fact, unfortunately, the show ended with a series cliffhanger. It was unexpected. We got caught up in what's now called the CW.
The TV show Half and Half. Let me know in the comments.
Tsunami. And there were shows that should have continued. In fact, we had been told we were getting picked up for at least 13. And then we got the call that another show got our slot. So that was hard. That was really hard to make those calls because people had expectations of coming back. Particularly because we had been told to go ahead and do this cliffhanger because y'all are coming back. But that's the business that we're in. It's unpredictable. It's volatile.
So as showrunner, is it on you to make the calls when you find out the show is canceled?
It isn't on me, but I put it on me because these are family members. These are personal relationships. This is not some cold call they should receive, especially when you know how it's going to hit. One of the actors was expecting another baby, so it was hard. Yeah. It was hard. And we didn't get to say goodbye to each other, But we really haven't. Like I said, we're still in touch.
Yeah. We did get a little bit of a Living Single reunion on Half and Half. Kyle and Maxine came back for an episode. Tell us a little bit about working with T.C. Carson and Erica again.
That was super fun. It was super fun to write those characters again, to see the evolution of their relationship and how it hadn't really evolved now that they were parents. The more things change, the more they stay the same. It was kind of fun to see. And I just remember Warner Brothers being so gracious because we had to go to them to get permission to use those characters, even though I had created those characters. I kind of co-own them, the IP with Warner Brothers, so we needed their permission. But they were very gracious. And Erica and TC really enjoyed reprising those roles. Really did. Yeah. And it was interesting to have Essence's character, Dee Dee, admire Maxine Shaw.
She was like flabbergasted and couldn't talk around her.
Completely flabbergasted. But it was also kind of prophetic. It's like that's what the audience is doing to this day. And that was even 20 plus years ago. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. How many people get to say that?
You mentioned that cliffhanger ending. Did you know who Mona would pick if the show were to come back?
Who do you think she would pick?
No, is it the pastry chef or the restaurateur?
When people ask me that question, I ask them. I bounce it back.
Yep.
That's who it was.
Perfect.
I have to save that in case there's a reboot.
So, there you go.
Because she might be with him, whoever he is.
I wanted to also mention Ellen Gittleson directed majority of the show. She directed a lot of Living Single as well. Talk a little bit about working with her.
Ellen Falcon Gittleson came in and rescued us on Living Single. We had an issue with our director starting with the 3rd episode, but it was very evident by the 4th episode of Living Single. And of course, you can imagine as a first-time show creator, there was a lot of panic. And our director just really couldn't make it to work consistently. So we had to make a change. And I had met Ellen and worked with her on A Different World season 1. And then I was actually her personal assistant on the Roseanne pilot. right after season 1 ended. So yes, I was babysitting her daughter. I was getting her dry cleaning. I was applying for a copy of the birth certificate for her children. It was the whole thing for her child, Sarah. And we were really good friends, but we, kind of had gone our separate ways. But I just thought, she gets this. Like, she's cool. She understands, like, the power of collaboration. And she was the person to call in that emergency situation. And the cast just loved her like I loved her. And it was just on and popping after that. So anything I could get her to direct, I did. And she did a great job on Half and Half. After all that she had done to, like, pick us up on Living Single and then direct so many episodes so beautifully, she was, my first choice for the pilot and then the series. And that cast loved her too.
Is there anything you want to say about the Roseanne pilot? Were you on set or involved in that in any way?
I was on set. I saw a lot. But I learned a lot, right? I learned about taking someone who is a comedian and putting them at the center of a show, and the value of finding other strong actors and characters to surround them with, to lift them up. Because you want it to work. You want it to work. You want to build a show to work. So use all of your knowledge, put it together, and then put it to work.
Let's get into talking about craft a little bit, because you are a writer, a producer, a showrunner. There's a lot of elements to your crafts. So let's just delve in there a little bit.
Okay.
We'll start with writing. What is it that you enjoy about writing?
When it's done. You're going to get that answer from a lot of writers. It can be a painful process, but I enjoy everything about it. I enjoy creating something from nothing. I don't particularly enjoy the blinking cursor or the blank page, but I do get a sense of pride from knowing that I'm going to fill those pages with something worthwhile. So I enjoy it. If I didn't enjoy it, I couldn't still do it.
I completely agree. There's nothing better than taking a vision in your head and making it as lifelike as possible. Yes, I love it.
When I don't enjoy it anymore, I'll be done.
And what is your process? Do you write longhand? Do you use note cards? Are you at the computer?
All of the above.
Yeah.
All of the above. I'm faster with longhand. But also now we can dictate things into little machines that spit it out. So I'll use whatever is, handy, quite frankly. If I have a notepad, I am very tactile, so I like to write things down a lot, but I also will use note cards to organize scenes or, to come up with character attributes, and I'll keep a little file. So I'm a little old school in keeping my my stuff organized and keeping some of those, keeping journals and index cards, using a whiteboard to break a story. But I love, a lot of this new tech that allows us to, have cards on the computer screen and move those cards around faster than, oh, we taped it on the board, now we got to take it off. Oh, now the board is sticky. And we got to move this card over here. So, some of the technology has made the process a little faster. But I don't know that makes it easier, because the birth of every show and the birth of every script is a little arduous. It is.
You mentioned
but
that.
Worth it.
Yeah. You mentioned you like to write sometimes at night or into the wee hours of the morning. Are there any other kind of rituals or routines to your writing? Do you like to have a certain beverage or anything like that?
I do love to have my environment just right. Love to get a candle going. like for the room to feel serene. Sometimes I play music. It depends on what mood I'm in. I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that, I guess from my childhood and riding around with my dad in his car, I listened to Sinatra. And that gives me a sense of peace. And sometimes I just like quiet. And so I'll write into the wee hours, or sometimes won't even start until midnight when everyone else is quiet. Actually, I was writing something the other night, and for whatever reason, someone upstairs decided that they also wanted to be up all night, kind of walking around, organizing their closet. I was like, what's going on? This is my writing time. You are supposed to be asleep. This is my me time. This is my ideating time. So yeah, I like my environment to be just so. And sometimes I'll, move around. Like I might want to be, where the wild things grow in my office here. I might sometimes also, step away from the desk and, lie on the floor and like spread pages out and really just look at it and, see where things might be a little dense or where a story might get bogged down. I just need to lay it out differently, not just kind of scrolling up and down, on a screen. I like to print out those pages and mark those pages up. That really helps me. And then I'll save those drafts. And then years later, I'll shred them. But yeah, I have a lot of paper. A lot of pens. Just kind of, I let the idea and the characters kind of guide me. And then they tell me, it's like, no, go sit on a pillow. When you're at like maybe a moment of blockage, creative blockage. Just change position, change space, step away from it. Yeah, I used to drink Mountain Dew if I needed to stay up. I'm more of a yerba mate gal now.
You've been involved with the Writers Guild showrunners training program. I think it just had its 18th session this year. Mm-hmm. Tell us how you got involved with the program and a little bit about it.
A guy named Jeffrey Melvoin created the showrunner training program after he and another writer, I believe John Worth, wrote a booklet about showrunning. And they just wanted to have, a more personal approach to the training, to the information that was in that pamphlet. And they're from the drama world, and they engaged a lovely woman named Carol Kirshner as the program administrator, and she sought me out to help shore up the curriculum for the comedy side of the program. And over the years, it's really evolved in such a way that there's very little distinction between the two because the differences are not so huge. It's really because you're also going from being a writer to a manager. And managing is managing, no matter what the enterprise, quite frankly. And one of the things that I think a lot of writers discover about themselves is that we're not necessarily natural managers. We're creatures that like to be isolated and antisocial when we're doing our thing. And so we basically demystify the show running process in the program and teach best practices, to the next generation of showrunners. Now, we've had a lot of people go on to run their own shows and do it very well. But it really is incumbent upon the participants to get what they're going to get out of it. It's for me, it feels a lot like my early days as an apprentice, being able to get exposure to a variety of aspects of production over time. But this is like 6 weeks intensive course, lots of panels. We have phenomenal showrunners come in and talk about every aspect of production and post you can think of. But it's also imperative that the participants ask questions and kind of they shape the course. And I love doing it because I love mentoring. That's always been a big part of who I am and what I want to do in the world. But also being there, I learn something new every year. I get some little tidbit from some other showrunner who's been through some situation that I hadn't seen. So I feel very, very ready to manage pretty much any situation that might come up, because it doesn't have to be the exact same situation that they're going through, but just like there's some elements of it that feel familiar. And then that there was some resolve and you can try to apply, what they said to your situation. And that's really what we're teaching in the program. And we have test case scenarios. So we have people, talking about how they would handle a certain situation, whether it's with cast or directors or Writers, like we talk about hiring and firing of writers, managing the writer's room, managing your time, managing the budget. It really runs the gamut. It's quite thorough, and you really, you get out of it what you put into it.
You've been a mentor to so many in the industry at this point. Is there anyone that you have considered a mentor in your career?
Unfortunately, not. Like, no one has really held my hand and guided me through various stages. I definitely, like, on A Different World, there was a cohort that I was part of. And people who definitely were there for me, but we were all kind of growing up and learning at the same time, so there wasn't a lot of mentorship, you know. But I think that's the thing. It's like, I'm in some ways a motherless. Like, I was motherless in this business, so I know what that could have meant had I had that. So I really do seek out that dynamic with others. Of course, there's a limit to how many people I can mentor at a time, and how intimately. But I try to make myself really available. I receive calls, every day of the week from somebody in this business, usually writers or writer directors, about something. And it's not even always about the work. Sometimes it's about their personal lives and how it's impacting the work and vice versa. But every day, pretty consistently. Some people that I know really well and have known for years, and other people that I've just been exposed to, through various relationships. But it's good. I mean, it's like it gives me a sense of meaning beyond the work.
Yeah.
Me and this young lady, we have so many different similarities when it comes to writing. I love being up late, like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I consider that my me time, just like her. And if you feel deep in your bones that you want to be a writer, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, but you just don't know how to make it happen, look in the description box below. Consider checking out my course, and you can also pick up my book, will be linked down there as well. You have just watched Yvette Lee Bowser interview, part 3 of 4.